Bipolar disorder. It's time. Welcome to Training Intervention Program for Behavior Change, Tips for Behavior Change. I am your psychologist and behavior specialist, Geraldine Garwood. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell. Today I'll be talking about bipolar disorder, and this is a follow-up video to my video on major depressive disorder. So, what is involved in bipolar disorder? Bipolar disorder is a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, and these emotional highs are either mania or hypomania, and some persons will have heard the term manic or hypermanic, and lows, which is depression. There are two subtypes to bipolar disorder. You have bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, and the DSM-5 now classifies it on a continuum of mild to severe. So, bipolar 1 disorder is the bipolar spectrum subtype that includes at least one manic episode. People with this disorder also have hypomanic phases preceding the manic episode. So, persons may have the hypomania prior to, before the manic episode, and most have depression at times as well. So, what is bipolar 1 criteria? How can somebody be diagnosed with bipolar 1? To be diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder, an individual must meet the full criteria of a manic episode, which includes three of the following symptoms: increased talkativeness, so the person is just talking non-stop; heightened self-esteem or grandiosity; decreased need for sleep; increased energy, goal-oriented activities or irritability; racing thoughts; decreased attention span; and increased risk-taking behaviors. Let me give you a typical example of what I've experienced, my first experience with bipolar disorder. I remember being called to a hospital where a young lady, a staff, she had a bipolar episode. She got up the morning, she called a cab or a taxi, and she gave the driver all her bank cards, all her documents, and she told the driver that she's going away. She's going to the airport. She need to go to the airport. She need to catch a flight because she's going overseas because she has a mission to be on. She was given a mission to be on, and she was talking a lot. So the driver, being a good person, took her to her workplace and called for a supervisor, handed over her documents to her supervisor, and there I was called in as a specialist to see her and to kind of assess what was going on with her. And when I went there, she was extreme talkativeness, talking, telling me that we are both going away, we are going on a mission, we have to get to the airport, we are late for our flight. So she was really, talking, have increased energy, racing thoughts. Her thoughts were all over the place, you know, and she intended to take an increased risk-taking behavior, which is really going to the airport to go on a flight which is not booked, you know, even calling the cab and giving the cab driver her documentation was risk-taking behavior. So this is what is involved in bipolar 1 disorder. For persons to be diagnosed with this disorder, they must meet the full criteria of the manic episode, and it includes any three of these symptoms. So bipolar 2. Bipolar 2 disorder is the subtype of bipolar spectrum disorder that is characterized by periods of hypomania. People with this disorder typically have more trouble with depression than elevated moods. They do not have manic episodes as bipolar 1, but they may experience mixed moods. So, the bipolar 2 criteria. A person may be diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder if he or she has experienced an episode of hypomania along with a depressive episode that is characterized by at least five of the following symptoms. So these persons have depressed mood, changes in sleep patterns, changes in eating patterns, lack of energy or fatigue, loss of interest and pleasure in activities he or she previously enjoyed, feelings of restlessness or slowing down, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, difficulty concentrating or making decisions, and suicidal thoughts. So while for bipolar 1, the person must have three or more of the symptoms to be diagnosed, for bipolar 2, the person must have five or more of these symptoms to be given a diagnosis. So, what is mania and hypomania? We have heard the term. What is involved? What do they mean? Mania and hypomania are two distinct types of episodes, but they have the same symptoms. Mania is more severe than hypomania and causes more noticeable problems at work, school, and social activities, as well as relationship difficulties. Mania may also trigger a break from reality, which is psychosis. So the hearing voices, right? And even for that young lady that I spoke about earlier, she was hearing voices, and the voices were telling her things that she need to do and places that she need to go, and these persons require hospitalization, and she was hospitalized based on what was happening with her. Hypomania, however, is an abnormally revved up state of mind that affects mood, thoughts, and behavior. So, a hypomania episode manifests with unusual gaiety. So, they are happy and excitement, flamboyance, or irritability, along with potential secondary characteristics like restlessness, extreme talkativeness, increased distractibility, reduced sleep, and intense focus on a single activity. So they are all revved up, they are excited, feel it excitement, and they're just talking, and they won't sleep, right? And they tend to be just focusing on one activity, saying the same thing, saying that they are going to do this one activity. So both are manic, and the hypomanic episode includes three or more of these symptoms: abnormality, upbeat, jumpy, or what we would call wired, increased activity, energy or agitation, exaggerated sense of well-being and self-confidence, that is euphoria, decreased need for sleep, unusual talkativeness, racing thoughts, distractibility, poor decision making, for example, going on buying sprees, yeah man, going on shopping sprees, taking out a sexual risk, or making foolish investments. I also recall a lady having bipolar episodes, and with her bipolar episode, she would carry different men in her house and engage in sexual activities with them. She took our money, so she went to the bank and draw out her money to the bank. So she was going to invest in person's business, and so she had to get necessary help, and was taken to the hospital also for medical treatment. So some tips on how we deal with bipolar disorder and how we support bipolar disorder. First, I want us to know that bipolar disorder is a real illness. It's a real illness like diabetes, cancer, hypertension, and it requires medical treatment. So this is one mood disorder that requires medical treatment. The person will actually be placed on prescription drugs to treat this disorder, as well as the person can also be placed on behavioral plans to assist with them to cope with the disorder. Individuals are not to blame for bipolar disorder, it's not their fault. So if you have a family member who has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, you need to encourage them that this is not their fault. They are not to be blamed for it. They didn't call it on themselves, right? And so all the relevant support has to be provided for such a person from a family context and also a communal context. Individuals can feel better. There are many treatments that can help bipolar disorder, and so persons just need to be compliant and follow the regime of the treatment given so that they can overcome their bipolar episode or bipolar disorder. Now, critical in all of this, if not treated, bipolar can get worse. So we encourage that persons get treated for their bipolar disorder if they are given a diagnosis, because if they do not follow up the treatment, they can get worse. And so it is important even during this pandemic that a number of persons may be experiencing depression, and having major depression can also lead to a bipolar episode, right? And so, as we look at major depressive disorders and bipolar disorder, which is also a depressive disorder as well, it's important that persons understand what is involved in these disorders and assess themselves to ensure that they are coping well, they have the relevant support in place to help them as they go through any form of depressive episode or any form of depressive disorders so that they can function and they can cope. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and click that notification bell.